8 here on the program. So, illustrated with facsimiles. I think if you have to tell your 5-year-old that name, facsimile, actually let's bring it up. Your what, 15-year-old? They won't know what a facsimile is. And generously annotated, the book, Prison Letters of Nelson Mandela, covers every aspect of life behind bars for the future South African leader and provides a new insight into how Mandela maintained his inner spirit while living in almost complete isolation and how he engaged with an outside world that became increasingly outraged by his plight as his imprisonment dragged into its 4th decade. Mandela's letters are organized chronologically and divided by the 4 prison venues in which he was incarcerated as a sentenced prisoner from 1962 to 1990. The book was edited by Sahm Venter, who joins us on the line from London in the UK. Sam, great to have you on the program. Welcome to Morning Live.
Hi, Leanne. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Well, talk to you again, I should say. We were hoping to Skype you, but unfortunately we can't do that. But I know we saw you just recently having edited another one of his incredible books that's been launched in the centenary year. So you've edited numerous books on former President Nelson Mandela, and it took you almost 10 years to compile this particular book. What was the journey like?
Well, Leanne, it started off in 2009 where I was asked by my boss, Vern Harris, to go to the National Archive and start copying his letters. And he had the blessing of Madiba himself. So a lot of it was organizing, classifying, compiling, copying, and then transcribing. So I suppose the sort of creative part of it started at the end of sort of late 2015, putting it all together. Yeah.
So, you know, the most popular time for people wanting to write to him was as a sentenced prisoner, obviously, while he was in Robben Island. And I think that that's something that we all wanted to hear about. But it's quite interesting to actually see that the letters begin even earlier than his time at Robben Island. They were sort of when he was at the Pretoria local prison, where he was held following his 1962 trial. Tell us a little bit about those letters.
Yeah, well, you know, I tried to tell a story from the very beginning of his 27 years, which actually was on the date of his arrest in August 1962. But the very first letter in the book, he writes to Amnesty. It wasn't called Amnesty International yet, but it's the day before he was sentenced to 5 years for leaving the country without a passport and inciting workers to strike. And it's basically a letter of gratitude to Amnesty to say, thank you for having sent an observer to my trial. You know, it's remarkable. He's about to go to jail, be sentenced to jail, for a while, and he's thinking about just thanking people, being kind, you know, and he had no idea what to expect, what was going to happen going forward. So from the beginning, this gracious leader.
Yeah. It's something so interesting, and I'm not sure if many South Africans know this. When Madiba actually arrived on Robben Island, he was only able to write and receive 1 letter of 500 words every 6 months. I mean, that's insane. But of course, I know it changed, I think, in 1967 after the intervention of Helen Suzman, after Madiba reported a reign of terror on the island, and he was allowed to receive and write 1 letter every 3 months. How much did writing and receiving these letters mean to him? I suppose I can answer that question myself, but from what you read, you know, how important was this to him?
Well, I think, Leanne, firstly, I want to acknowledge all the other prisoners who were with him in B section. They were prisoners from all kinds of organizations. Mac Maharaj, who's still with us, Ahmed Kathrada, who published his own book of letters in 1999. So it was a lifeline to every single one of them. And I was fortunate enough to be in his cell with him in 1994, very briefly. Yeah. And I asked him what it was like when they locked that gate of your cell every night, every afternoon at 3:30. And I said, what did you do until the morning? He said, I read and I wrote letters. Yeah. And so it was his only connection to his family.
It's, I suppose it's very difficult to imagine, to put yourself in that position, and it's just something that you hang on to and wait every day for something like that. The book actually contains 255 of some letters written to unyielding prison authorities, fellow activists, government officials, but most especially to his then wife and love of his life, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, and his 5 children. What were some of the emotions that they reveal about his state of mind when he actually wrote to them?
Well, I think he missed them all dreadfully. And he had to be a father to young children who were not even allowed to visit him until they turned 16. So I think the pain that it inflicted on his family is very, very deep to this day. But, you know, mentioning Mum Winnie, I'd just like to tell people how helpful she was in putting this book together. We had to work out who a lot of the people were, to help the reader find out, you know, who's he talking about. And she was just so helpful and remarkable, as was Mac Maharaj.
Yeah. Just finally, as we wrap up the interview, I mean, I could speak to you for a lot longer, but unfortunately we need to wrap it up. And I think this is just a teaser for people to go out there and actually buy this book, which is already on bookshelves and has been released. One of the interesting facts is the different ways he actually signed off some of the letters with his signature. Each letter, depending on who was the actual recipient. For example, his official correspondence, it was N.R. Mandela. To his family, it was Dalibunga, and to his children, it was just Tata. Tell us a little bit of the story behind this.
Well, obviously, when he's writing to the authorities, he uses his full name, Nelson Mandela. When he wrote to Mum Winnie, they decided that they were going to call each other. He was going to call her Dadewetu, sister, while she was in prison. And he was going to sign his name Dalibunga, which was his initiation name, until she got out of prison. So, you know, there was a lot of, and she told me herself she was supposed to call him that, because that was his proper name that he got when he went through the initiation into manhood. So, you know, there was also coded affections in the way that he related to her and his family.
Yeah. Sam, thank you very much. Thank you for this. And for those of you that do get the book, it's out there. It's letters that were written, and I think one of the most profound and I suppose devastating letters was for Madiba to receive the news of the passing of his son, Tembekile, or Tembi, and his mother. He was not allowed to attend their funerals, but the letters are there as to how he was delivered this news. So go and get the book. It is a real keepsake and a beautiful read. All right, Sahm Venter edited this book and put it together. Thanks, Sam. Enjoy your time in London.
Thanks so much.
10 minutes before 8 here on the program. Let's take a break. More about Madiba after this.